Yep, you're recording.
All right, everyone. Last looks. Right on set. Roll sound. Sound speed. Roll camera. Camera speed. Scene one. Take one. Mark it. And action. Hi, I'm Ed, the host of Savannah on Film, and we explore the economic and cultural impact and values of the film industry in Savannah through conversations with people who work in the industry and related fields. You can find us here on WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. I love all the fanfare there. A very long intro. Welcome to Savannah on Film, everybody listening around the world and here in Savannah. I want to remind you real quick that Savannah on Film, our purpose here is to explore the economic and cultural impact of the film industry in Savannah through conversations with people who work in the industry and related fields. We're here on WRUU 107.5 FMLP, Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul. I got to do that voice. And just a reminder, WRUU is back on Twitter. Well, they've always been on Twitter at WRUU 1075. That's WRUU 1075. So you want to check that out, possibly. A lot of great stuff going on there. My guest today has over, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy Ryan. He has 36 years of experience in the film industry. And this man's name falls under, his talents fall mainly under camera and the electrical department. He has worked on just an array of films. One of the last ones he's worked on, you've probably heard of Bad Boys for Life with this newcomer called Will Smith. He's worked on that. He was a gaffer on that. He's worked on Lady and the Tramp, the fantastic Disney Plus movie, live action remake that was really showcased the beauty of Savannah, and it was a crown jewel, I think, in the Disney Plus and the launch of the service there. This gentleman's worked on Bumblebee, which I think is one of the best Transformers films. Totally love that. Logan, which I'm going to reach off camera here and show you something real quick that a friend of mine got me. This is a little extra here for those who are not who are watching the video. And nice poster there of Logan. So that's in my studio here. So anyway, if you're on the radio, that meant nothing. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just had to fanboy there a little bit because he's worked on The Rock. He's worked on The Abyss with the fantastic visionary James Cameron. The original Transformers, Looper, which was a great film. I mean, I could go on and on. He goes way back to his Savannah roots here. And without all that further ado, welcome to the show, Andy Ryan. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Ed. Very happy to be here. We've tried to do this for a while now. Finally, we get to do it.
Yeah, finally. I mean, you are a hardworking man, and that's something we all wish we were doing now. we all wish we were doing since March.
Yeah, me included. It's no secret. The film industry's basically been shut down. It's starting to take its first steps back right now. There's a few productions getting off the ground, but I finished the last feature I did was a movie called Deep Water that Adrian Lyne directed. You might remember him from Fatal Attraction, The
Oh, yeah.
Decent Proposal, Flashdance, with Ben Affleck. And we finished that third week of February, I think. And I was all set to go on to my next job, which was a Netflix film called Rebel Ridge with John Boyega of Star Wars fame. And we were 2 weeks away from starting principal photography. And here it comes. They shut it down. They shut the entire industry down. And that was the middle of March, I think, second week of March. And we all hope to come back in a couple of weeks. And here we sit on July 23rd, still waiting.
Yeah, when we're recording this, it's starting to look like some of the productions are trying to come back. I know the DGA has put out a very extensive path to getting back to set, and but nothing is going to be in the film industry, and I think the world, nothing is going to be like it was before, you know.
It's not. It's just not for a long time. And there, you know, we're all concerned about the virus. Each and every one of us who would be on a set are concerned about it. From an industry standpoint, one of the big concerns are convincing the actors to come back, that it's a safe workplace for the actors. Now, if you're an actor like a Tom Hanks, let's use him as an example, there's no need for him to go back to work, even though he's had the virus.
Right.
But a lot of these actors don't feel like it's the right time to get their feet wet with this. So what we as an industry are trying to do is to make the workplace, the set, as safe as we can for us and for them. Now, there's a couple of shows that are starting. One big one that started shooting this week is Macbeth. Do you know what this is?
No, I do not. But if it's truly Macbeth, I love it. Or is that just
Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers? It's his first solo directing job without his brother Ethan. It's a Denzel Washington movie, and they're shooting it in Los Angeles on the lot at Warner Brothers. And the precautions they put in place are pretty incredible. You have an app on your phone where each morning you have a list of questions you have to answer. If you answer those and there are no negatives, you're then allowed to proceed to the studio, to the parking area, and then you go on the lot.
Do you get tested?
Well, that's before you get tested.
Okay.
And then what they'll do, Warner Brothers has set up a lab at the studio to process their test. That's a whole other conversation about how the testing works. But they do it right then and there. The set's broken up into some use the term pods, other zones. The camera and everything around the camera is they're different terms for it, but that's the most crucial zone. You're tested every day, and you have the test results back usually in half an hour, 45 minutes. But that's people great. In that zone are tested every single day. Face masks are mandatory, and I'll just interject right here. Wear the damn mask. Wash your hands. Distance. These are easy things to do, not just to get my industry back to work, but to get the millions of people in the hospitality and the airline and all these other industries back to work. But back to Macbeth, they're doing everything they can. Disinfecting, hand washing. I'm not going to go down the list. I got a 147-page document last night from my union outlining our jobs in this environment, what we have to do in disinfecting equipment, wearing a mask, social distancing, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But these guys are really trying to find a safe way forward to get this movie finished. There's another movie in Atlanta, a Netflix movie that The Rock's in. What they're doing, they're going to another extreme. They're going to quarantine the entire cast crew for 12 weeks while they make the movie.
Put
So
them
in other words,
and everything.
once you go into the bubble, you're in the bubble. There's no going to a restaurant. There's no going home. There's no visitors.
Wow.
You're in that bubble. You're in a hotel for 12 weeks, except when you go to work. That's another extreme in all of this. And in between, there are a number of productions trying to find the right way forward. Everything hinges on testing. And if you read the news or turn on your TV, you know that's a problem right now. Well, the way testing works is if you're a business, you pay a lab to process X number of tests for you. You reserve your space in that lab. When you go to a testing site, let's say it's in Daffin Park or something, those tests just go in and they get done whenever they can. But what businesses and the studios are doing are paying to have their tests processed. That's the first cost. Second cost is how quickly do you want results? You can get them in 24 hours, but it's going to cost more money. So we can't get back to work without testing. And they're saying that on an average production, we'll be tested 3 times a week, with the results coming back in 24 hours.
Right.
So, you know, and the way I look at it, it's a bad look right now when we get out there and we're getting our test results at 45 minutes, an hour, 24 hours, where most people can't get their results back for a week.
Yeah, that is a big problem, people getting the test back and you don't know how to proceed with your life, you know, what do? You're waiting on a positive, or you're waiting on hopefully a negative, but it could be a positive. And by the time you get that test back, what's to say that you don't get
false positives? I was on a call Saturday with people that do the same thing I do from all over the world. And I forget where this one gaffer was from. It was it might have been Brussels, but he got a false positive.
Oh my gosh.
He immediately lost the job,
wow.
Got 2 more tests, and they both came back negative. But at that particular point, the job was gone. I mean, there's a whole lot of, it's the expression we keep using is like peeling an onion. Once you pull away one layer, there's another layer. We talk about viral load a lot. You know, being outside, the viral load's at a minimum. But once you start putting us in a confined space, it starts to increase along with the amount of time you're in that space. We talk about vectors in these calls. It's someone who sends their kids back to school, and as anyone who's a parent knows, when they're 8, 10, 12 years old, they're little petri dishes when they come home.
Right.
You get everything. And there's a whole concern now that a crew member's kids will go to school, bring the virus into that family's home and into the workplace. Like I said, there's so many layers to this. Masks certainly are a huge, huge step. Washing your hands, sanitizing constantly, distancing whenever you can. I mean, these things all help. But right now, we don't know what the clear path forward is. And as these productions start to ramp themselves up, we're going to figure it out together. There was a show in New Orleans that had a positive test beginning of last week. They had to shut that pod down. Everyone had to get tested. Then we find out that, again, it was a false positive.
That's crazy. I mean, how do they, I wonder how the company that gave the false positive, I wonder, what their ratio is on false positives, and, can you trust that particular company?
It happens. I was on a call yesterday that was kind of chaired by 2 doctors. Mm-hmm. And they talked about all of these things. They talked about the reliability of certain tests, with the antibody test being the least reliable. And it was just really interesting at how they come about testing, because their whole purpose is their company runs testing for businesses trying to get back to work.
Right.
And it's complicated. I don't know what the easy answer is. I don't think you're going to see a Marvel movie for quite some time, because to have 300 people in a space is going to be difficult. The next Spider-Man starting prep in Atlanta right now. They're at Pinewood Studios. They're trying to figure out how they're going to move forward with 150 people, with stunt performers, actors, crew members, transportation, all the drivers, all these
Right.
different people. We're all hoping is that these shows get started on a smaller basis and start to figure it out, to figure out how we can then ramp it up to a larger scale.
One of my biggest concerns is I'm starting to see productions ramp up here in the Savannah area. Now, you're currently joining us from New Orleans, correct? You know, and
Correct.
You're seeing things shut down there. Bars are shutting down again.
Bar
And-
shut down a couple of weeks ago, and the governor just extended that till August 7th.
And you know, like I said, we're June 23rd, June 20 when we're recording this, and you know, I'm seeing some productions. I don't want to name them, but some lower budget or independent films. And one's going around right now looking for people, and they've specifically put stringent rules upon, you know, the COVID testing. And if you're not comfortable or you're afraid that you may contract COVID-19, please don't even apply, you know, as a background actor for this or whatever. And they're limiting the number of background actors. You know, we've talked on shows before about the future of background actors. This could decimate that part of the industry, which is a lot of folks, you know, in Savannah, you know, I mean, certainly other departments, but for background actors, it's, you know, that's hurting cats, right?
Time runs together. A month, 6 weeks ago, and one of the people on the call was one of the producers for Walking Dead. And as he said to me, what they're doing is figuring out a way to take 20 background actors and then through visual effects, multiply them out. One of the things that's happening, writers are writing scripts that are a little less complex, that are a little easier to do. Directors of photography, production designers are all going to have to simplify their plans a little bit to make this doable. But I do want to touch on what you were just talking about with the low budgets. And all the conversations that I've been privy to where this has come up, that's one of our big concerns. They say that the cost of COVID testing, sanitizing, disinfecting, masks, et cetera, could increase the cost of a budget by 20%.
That's
those
a chunk.
movies can't carry that. The other issue here is insurance. How do you insure your production? How do you they're not going to write a policy that covers you in the event that someone gets sick. That would be, they're just not going to do it.
Right. And also on these lower budget or almost no budget films, they're not going to have all the things that maybe the union would have in place, or they're kind of going on the goodwill of, okay, this production is going to do the right thing. And not that they're not professionals, but on these lower budget or really independent films, or even when you get down to, like student films and all that, that's what really scares me too.
Well, I got two things. First, I want to get to the student films in just a second, because I actually have a personal story along those lines. But every production's to have what's called a COVID manager, a COVID coordinator, a COVID director. What they're doing is hiring people with medical backgrounds to come in and work with us on productions to make sure that we are doing the right things, that people are wearing their masks, that people are sanitizing their hands, people are disinfecting their equipment. So every production from here on in will have one of those on it. And I don't think a lot of the lower budgets will have the money to pay those people.
That's right.
Films. I have a dear, dear friend, one of my oldest friends, his name's Brian Stewart. He runs the Colorado Film School. They're going online for the fall semester. And as he said, he's worried about the future of the school, because you can't do film school online. It does not work. There can be no student films. No one's going to be making student films. No one.
That's
That's
an
gone for
issue
a while.
that's propped up here. I saw it because I'm connected in all these Facebook groups, and there were some SCAD students early on, um, and SCAD was handling it, as well as they could within, the parameters they're supposed to. And they're like, well, we'll take that. There were a few comments. We'll take that chance. We need to make our student film. We can't,
Crazy. That's crazy. That's ridiculous.
and they shut that down pretty much and said, no, your health and your safety is far more important than that.
Well,
But
I think you come to a certain amount of stupidity sometimes. But my wife sits on the board of the New Orleans Film Society, and they sponsor the New Orleans Films Festival every October here.
Mhm.
Well, needless to say, it's been canceled for this year. They're going to try to do some kind of a virtual film festival. They've had a lot of entries because these films were made before the virus struck. But what's going to happen a year from now when these film festivals do come back up and running? There's going to be nothing there. There's no product there.
I wonder. I think we may have touched on another show on this here on Savannah on Film, but I'm thinking that you mentioned it a little bit earlier, how the studios, when they're writing, the films they're writing, the big budget films are writing simpler. They're going to have to write, thinking about background actors and all that. I almost feel like it gives an advantage to the independent filmmaker, because now Hollywood is going to become like the independents in a way. It's almost like they're switching places.
It does, and you're going to see more of that. You're going to see. It's going to be interesting if they can get the fall TV schedule up and running. How a lot of these series are going to look.
Right.
That have been running for one of the long-running series here is NCIS New Orleans. They're starting the process to come back online, to get back up and shooting. It's going to be interesting how the look of that changes.
Yeah, thinking about like the late night shows, I don't think I've watched any of them since the pandemic's really sunk in, because it's those shows aren't the same without a studio audience.
I do watch them. I watch Colbert every night.
Yeah.
I watch the Daily Social Distancing Show every night. They've adjusted, and at first it was freaky.
Yeah.
John Oliver's not the same without an audience.
He definitely isn't, and he's brilliant. He's brilliant. The
first couple of times, it takes some getting used to. But like with Colbert, you get used to it and you embrace it. And it's actually, he kind of helped us with that, with the Zoom calls and figuring it out in front of us, willing to make mistakes in front of us. I watched that. I got nothing else to watch. What else am I going to do? Yes, I could go to bed, but Colbert comes on at 10:30 here, so I'm not staying up that late.
Right.
But it's interesting the way everything has adapted and changed, and that's going to be our world moving forward.
Yeah, we're not just going to snap back. I mean, and everybody's eager to get back to work. There's, the unemployment's possibly running out if it doesn't get renewed. I've got so many friends that are in panic mode again, and, it subsided for a little bit, and they're just tired of sitting around. They're tired of not creating,
And I'm not
on
going to get
the
all
level they were before.
I'm not going to get all doom and gloom, because that's not what this is about. But that enhanced unemployment has been a lifeline to a lot of the technicians in the film business who don't have a lot of money put away. I'm old. I've been around a while. I'm okay. But there are others who don't have that. And that's been a lifeline for them, especially in a place like Los Angeles, where your rent's going to run you $1,800 a month if you're not lucky enough to own a house. And a house is going to cost you $900,000. But if that were to go away, and today, July 23rd, it looks like it might or get reduced, there's going to be a lot of people that have had great jobs for a long period of time that have been unlucky enough to get caught up in this, that aren't going to be able to come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing restaurants that aren't making, family-owned businesses. My friend lives up the country. I call it up the country. It's in Vidalia, and it's up the country from Savannah, as we say down here. And their one theater that they have, they call it a sweat box, basically, because that's what it is. And they had to close down after 19 years in business, so they have no movie theater in Vidalia, Georgia now because of that. And
It's
that's
happening here, and we'll get on to something a little more fun.
right.
But it's
Well,
happening here in New Orleans because we have way more restaurants than a city of our size can support. What supported it for years was the tourism convention business that came into town. What's happening, they're starting to close one by one. Every day in the paper, there's another restaurant that's closed because they just can't make it. And the tourists aren't coming back anytime soon. The conventions aren't coming back. But you know, that's I think we've got the show off to a gloomy enough start.
I know. Yes, we've got the doom and gloom, as the Rolling Stones would say.
Yeah, we got that out of the way.
More doom and gloom, and I promise we'll be more upbeat in the rest of this show. And I do want to say, by the way, the opinions expressed here are not necessarily the opinions of WRUU or anyone that does business with them. So just got to throw that in there just for fun. And these are our opinions, and based on some fact and your dealings, you deal with a lot more people in the industry directly.
It's a never-ending series of Zoom calls. It's
Yeah.
what it is right now. And you can't do all of them. You try to do as many as you can. But it's Zoom calls. Every week, you wake up every day. Well, what am I going to do today? Oh, I got 3 Zoom calls today. That's what we've been reduced to.
You know, on this episode, especially of this show, I feel like Professor Xavier from X-Men, and when he's talking to Magneto, and he says, "What are you looking for, Charles? Are you peeking around in here?" And he says, "I'm looking for hope," and that's exactly, I think, what we're all looking for in the industry.
At the end of the day, listen, Ed, if I didn't have hope, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
You hope. That's all you can do is hope. You do the right things and you hope. I think that's
I'm interested. Yeah, I'm interested to see the kind of stories that are going to come out of writers going through the pandemic, knowing people, because at this point in this country, at least, and around the world, everybody just about knows somebody who's been affected by COVID in some way, shape, or form. It's
not just dying or having the disease. It's someone who's unemployed.
Right.
Everybody's been touched by this. But to address your other point, I can't wait for the Hallmark's COVID Christmas special.
Oh my God. In isolation. you know, keep your distance 6 feet.
And there are those shows. Michael Bay has a COVID themed movie that he's hoping to shoot really soon. I mean, they're out there. You read about them. You read about them in the trades, and there are going to be those movies. But I'm going to be interested to see how these movies. I mean, to me, one of my favorite movies last year were The Two Popes.
Oh yeah, that was a very good film.
Two great actors acting. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Think about it. And it was incredible. You couldn't take your eyes off of it. And what I'm hoping is nothing against the Marvel films, but maybe we have a fewer of those and more things like The Two Popes or The Marriage Story. These great character-driven movies.
Parasite, you know.
That was fantastic.
Fantastic film. My favorite film of last year. One of them was Jojo Rabbit.
That's my favorite film of last year, without a doubt. And that director, if you haven't watched his Thor, you got to. And what's the other things we do in the dark? The vampire. That's great. I mean, Jojo Rabbit was my favorite movie of last year, without a doubt. Not even close. That was just.
Well, we're gonna talk about a lot more stuff, and I promise we're gonna bring up the feeling this show. It's not all gloom and doom and COVID. There's so many exciting things going on. And we're gonna talk about some great stories you've had with some previous films, and I want to pick your brains and just get that knowledge. And so we're gonna hit a few breaks. We're gonna hit a break here, and then we'll be back. So don't go anywhere here on Savannah on Film.
Disasters don't stop even during a pandemic. The Red Cross is here to help when disasters strike. They respond to a disaster every 8 minutes. They help people to prepare for disasters, and they help prevent disasters such as home fires. The Red Cross saves lives by providing blood. And now, free COVID-19 antibody testing is available when donating blood with the Red Cross. More information about Red Cross services and donating blood can be found at www.redcross.org. This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. Social distancing means minimizing contact with people. It also means that if you are near someone in public, try to stay at least 6 feet away. The less contact people have with one another means the less opportunity for the virus to spread. Slowing the spread of the virus means that we can keep our healthcare system from becoming overwhelmed. More information can be found at dph.georgia.gov.
WRUU brings you the most diverse and passionate local radio programming on the air in Savannah. This all-volunteer and nonprofit community radio station accepts no money from any form of government. Our diversity and independence is made possible only through the generous financial support of listeners like you. We rely on your annual and ongoing monthly contributions to cover the many costs associated with bringing you our broadcast and web programming. If you are a contributor, thank you. If you're not yet a contributor, please show your appreciation of the role WRUU plays in your life by becoming a contributor in any amount. You can donate quickly and easily by credit card or check. Just find the donate and subscribe links at wruu.org. Thanks for listening to and supporting WRUU.
This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
And we're back here on Savannah on Film with my fantastic guest, Andy Ryan. He's got 36 years of experience in the industry, in the camera and electrical department. He's worked on so many films. And so we're going to go back in time to, let's say, 1981, The Big Chill, which there may be people alive that weren't alive, that definitely weren't alive when that film came out. And that was such a spectacular film. And just the soundtrack alone is just, fantastic. And you have some stories about that production, The Big Chill. Can you tell us about that?
Well, that was shot in Beaufort, and great soundtracks. Don't forget Forrest Gump was a great soundtrack as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I was, a kid getting started. I was like, a day player. They'd have me for a few days, and you'd go in and you'd carry the cable, do the heavy stuff. But they completely took over that house in Beaufort for the entire show, which was also the Santini house in the Great Santini that was shot in Beaufort. So it's the exact same house, which some people will go, hey, isn't that it's the exact same house? But that was, I was a kid back then. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know. I just knew that if I did the really ugly, hard work, they wouldn't fire me. It would make up for what I didn't know. And believe me, I didn't know anything. Anything. But, back then in the early mid-'80s, there wasn't a lot of work in Savannah. And I left. I went to Los Angeles about that time to seek my fortunes there. So, and I would come back every now and then. But in the mid-'80s, things started picking up in Savannah. I think I came home and I did a thing called Solomon Northrup's Odyssey, which was 12 Years a Slave before it was done years later as 12 Years a Slave. It was a PBS American Playhouse when they used to have those things. And it was the start. There was a series of TV movies back when they had movies of the week.
Right.
I remember doing a film called Pals in Savannah with Donna Michi and George C. Scott.
Oh my gosh.
And these things were kind of our bread and butter. We had enough to keep the local industry going. And when we didn't have enough, there was work in Charleston, like North and South was shot in Charleston. Right. And a lot of us from Savannah went up and worked on that. And then I kind of went away and made my fortune somewhere else. working in Los Angeles. I think after I left, I did The Abyss. Then after that, what did we do after The Abyss? Oh, we did a Steven Spielberg movie called Always.
Oh yeah.
Was that,
was that where
Holly Hunter and Richard Dreyfuss?
and was he a pilot in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pilot, a smoke jumper. He was a firefighter.
Exactly. That's what it was. Yeah.
And then after that, I think what did we do after? We did Arachnophobia.
Right. Now,
took me to Venezuela.
In 88, you did 1969. And if I'm correct, that was Robert Downey Jr.
We got all about that. And you're absolutely right.
And you were.
The Ryder was in that.
And
got all about that.
Funny
Thank
thing
you.
about that is the church that I go to, they actually filmed in the gym, and I went to grade school there. And I would have
talking about Sacred Heart.
Yeah, Sacred Heart in Savannah, and and I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. When I got in the industry, I was looking up some places and films that were filmed here, obviously, and I remember that, and that's really cool. Backdraft, you were on Backdraft. Was a phenomenal film. Is a phenomenal film.
I just watched that the other night, strangely enough. One of the bad things about not working and having the internet and 200 cable channels, whatever it is,
right? You
flip through at night, and my daughter has a running joke. She goes, every night there's a dad movie on.
Oh my God, I love that.
And the one that's on the most is The Notebook, which is not surprising.
I have not seen it. I will admit I have not seen The Notebook.
But
I'm not demographic, I guess. So
the other night, Backdraft was on, and the cinematographer on that, Mikhail Solomon, is one of my dear, dear friends. He's like my mentor. Without Mikhail Solomon, there'd be no me right now. So I sat and watched it, and it's a great movie. Those fire scenes that we did they're fantastic.
They still hold up. Yeah.
It holds up. The story holds up. The look holds up. And I've done 4 Ron Howard movies, so he's one of my all-time favorites.
I was going to say he always seems to be phenomenal to work with. He just seems like such a nice guy. And, he's Opie. He'll always be Opie, but he's, done so much as a director. It's amazing.
I remember when we were doing Far and Away, and we were shooting in Ireland, and we were in this huge castle that had these reflecting ponds, and there's Ron skipping rocks across the pond, just like it were Opie in the Andy Griffith Show. And it was just one of those memories that I'll always cherish of him just standing there by himself, skipping stones across the water.
I got to ask you, what was it like doing The Abyss? Because that is still one of my favorite James Cameron movies. Of course, I'm a Terminator nut, so I just love the Terminator films, even the so-called not so good ones. I love them all, and but especially T2. The first 2 are definitely the best. But James Cameron is so forward-thinking. Obviously, from my background here on the video, you can tell I'm a Star Wars fan too. I love George Lucas's vision and how he pushed cinema, in a new direction, the technology and how he pushed it forward and the stories he told. But James Cameron's doing the same thing. And he's like Ang Lee. Ang Lee is phenomenal cinematography. It's incredible.
It's interesting because we got hired to do that. And we really didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't have a clue. Of course, everybody knew who Jim was, but we didn't really understand what he had in store for us. And
that must have been him. I heard that ding. That was him calling you.
Yeah, that's a buddy of mine asking about a good place to buy wine in Napa Valley. All right, I'll get to that later. But we were summoned to Gaffney, South Carolina, which is, if you know anything about Gaffney, it's the home of the Peach Noid. In House of Cards, that was the district that Kevin Spacey represented, was Gaffney, South Carolina. His other claim of fame is Andy McDowell's from Gaffney, South Carolina.
Oh, God, she's a wonderful actress. She really is.
We went there because, this is way more than you need to know, but I'll give you the story. Duke Power had decided to build 3 nuclear power plants in the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. They finished the first, brought it online, and started the second. They got midway through the second and realized they wouldn't need the second or the third. So the property that they were building the second one on, if they were to back out and pull out, they'd have to destroy everything, pull it all out, and restore the land. So they sold it to a man named Earl Owensby, who was doing movies out of Shelby, Tennessee, like the Killer Rottweilers and things, B movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we went there because of the nuclear reactor that was half finished. It was like a huge wok. And we show up in Gaffney, and none of us really know anything. I showed up right after the 4th of July and didn't leave till Christmas. Then we went to LA and shot for 4 more months. But Jim had a vision. He had $30 million of Fox's money, which at the time in 1987 we were shooting, 88 we were shooting that. It was a fortune. And we basically built ourselves a movie studio. Amazing. Basically, we're building this set, the deep core set to put in the water. And we were building it like a movie set. We finally realized that if we didn't get engineers in and whatnot, we were all going to die. But we were tasked with coming up with technology that didn't exist at the time. That movie today would be the easiest. Mikhail and I were laughing last time we were together back in November. That'd be the easiest movie in the world to do today with the cameras, with digital cameras and everything else. But back in the time, the technology didn't exist. The underwater lighting that's become so prevalent in the industry was invented on that by a buddy of mine, Pete Romano. I mean, we were inventing things. And the thing about Jim Cameron, if you work for Jim, the one thing you have to understand, you can never say to Jim, well, that's never going to work. Or have you tried it? And he's right.
Have you tried it? Yeah.
And lo and behold, you'd figure out a way to do it. Every day we were inventing something on the fly. The whole GFI system we came up with to ensure the safety of the lights in the water. And we were up there working 6 days a week, living in Gaffney, South Carolina. The joke was there was one restaurant where the waitress would actually bring the food to your table because everything was fast food. There was nothing else. And we were shooting in this building, and you're down in the water. It's got to be dark. So they put a huge tarp over this tank, and they brought in a rigging key grip by the name of Andy Anderson. And he was famous because he tarped in the back lot at Universal for Streets of Fire. So this guy was the best in the business, came in, tarped it, and we started, shooting. About a week and a half, 2 weeks in, here comes a big thunderstorm, rips the tarp off the top of the tent. So now all the daylight's coming in. So they got these little tiny black pellets and said, we're going to pour them in the water. It'll make a curtain on the top. It will stop the light from coming in. Well, all it did was made 1 million points of light coming in. So we then had to go to shooting nights, which Jim preferred to do anyway. So for weeks on end, we were shooting at night in this tank. And Jim was in the water the whole time. And when in the water, the only person who could speak that was in the water was Jim. And he had this thing we called a clear comm, and you'd hear the air rushing past this microphone, and it would go, shh. Now, about 3 a.m, you're hearing that, and you're sitting there and you start to fall asleep, and then you hear Jim just arrive. Dad, I told you! And just start screaming, and we'd all jump up. But this went on for weeks on end. That was our life, is in that tank. It was called A Tank. And we finished shooting at Christmas time. We regrouped after the holidays in Los Angeles. We still hadn't shot the end of the movie and lots of other things. We shot for 6-7 weeks. There was no more money. We shut down, came back 2 weeks later to shoot for 2 more weeks, shut down again, and then came back. Jim financed like another week or so out of his own pocket, which was hilarious because one day he caught me going to craft service, which for those who don't know, That's where all the food is and the drinks and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah, no,
In
definitely.
COVID times. And Jim took one look at me and said, "What the hell are you doing over here? I'm paying you to work, not to eat," and just screamed at me, made me go back to work.
Oh dear.
Of course, he turned around and walked off, and I went right back to craft service. But it was quite the experience. Once you've been to battle with Jim Cameron, it's all easy after that. Michael Bay was a piece of cake after Jim Cameron. I used to call him to his face, Jim Light.
Oh my God.
That would set Michael off on a whole other.
Another plane of existence there. Let's see.
But the movie's great. If you're going to watch The Abyss, watch the director's cut.
Definitely.
That's
I
what we
love the
want.
director's cuts on anything. I mean, you know, the films are much better with the director's cut.
Well, he had a vision, and the studio got scared, and the studio cut the movie in a way that wasn't to his liking. I remember going to see that movie in Billings, Montana, when we were doing Far and Away. Was it Far and Away? No. Yeah, no. I saw Backdraft. We were doing Far and Away. I forget where I saw The Abyss, but it was just, we all watched it together and said, that's not the movie that we made. And lo and behold, here comes the director's cut, which is way closer to the movie that we made. I've still got that script somewhere, the original script.
I mean, you've worked on other stuff like Armageddon, which is pretty cool. I think you had a starring role. You played the Greenpeace guy. I'm trying to think who the Greenpeace
On the
guy-
boat.
on the
Bruce
boat.
wants to hit golf balls at us.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to watch it again. I still love Armageddon. I love films like that. Like,
Well, I watched, that's funny, because I watched that not that long ago. Not that I sit around watching my movies all day, but that was on one night early on in all of this, back in March or April. And I said, you know what? Why not? So I sat here and watched it, and it brought back so many memories. We got to do so many cool things on that. NASA had given us carte blanche. We had the approval of the Clinton administration to do whatever we wanted at NASA,
wow.
which was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Then I think we ended the movie by going 180 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico to shoot on an oil rig, a functioning oil rig. 3-hour helicopter ride out. I mean,
you worked. I mean, like one of the ones you worked on. You were a gaffer on Deepwater Horizon. Is that the Mark Wahlberg? Was that the Mark Wahlberg film? Which I thought was pretty incredible. Some of the scenes in that, and
now, let me tell you something.
Amazing.
We never set foot on a real oil rig.
Really?
Not one day. Because there's not an oil company in the world that would allow us to go out to their rig making a movie about the Deepwater Horizon. We couldn't even go out to scout an oil rig. They would not allow it. So we shot that in parking lots. Those sets were built in parking lots.
Wow.
That movie should have won the visual effects Oscar, because you would have sworn we were on a rig, and it was all shot in parking lots.
Yeah. One movie you worked on, and we talked about a mutual friend of ours, Stratton Leopold, you worked with on Mission Impossible 3, number 3. And I think he was one of the executive producers on that. And he's a staple here in Savannah.
Stratton's a dear friend. If you go in Leopold's in the ice cream store, there are scripts up on the wall. There's an MI3 script on the wall that I signed. It's very funny because when we would come back to Savannah, my daughter would have to go to Leopold's for ice cream.
Does he charge you for ice cream? Do you get the free?
I tell you what, Stratton and I started together. We go back that far. We grew up not that far from each other. Stratton and I go back that far. Yeah. And I saw Stratton when I was home on Lady and the Tramp. But we were doing stuff in Savannah back when there was nobody else doing stuff in Savannah.
Yeah, I mean, people, when we talk about the film industry, I always consider Stratton one of the big bangs of the film industry in Savannah. I mean, and he's probably been over all these years, probably one of our best ambassadors, for film.
I'm old enough to remember. I remember when Leopold's existed on Haversham and Gwinnett. I'm old enough to remember going there.
My mom actually worked there for about 11 years or so.
So yeah. Then there was a second Leopold's, and one of the brothers opened in the in the Water Shopping Center, which I don't know what's in that shopping center these days. 63rd and Waters. I don't know what's in there anymore.
Oh,
But
it's changed. It's changed in a good way. It's got some SCAD dorms in it, and and it's changed, and it's kind of gone upscale, and
But
so yeah.
Stratton's a great guy, and that movie will always have. That was back when Tom Cruise was at his craziness. I've done a few Tom Cruise movies, so I've known Tom through the years.
Oh yeah,
But that was great.
I have mad respect for him because of the businessman that he is and how he does his own stunts. And I'm scared to death that one day the next Mission Impossible film will be the last one because he's really going to get seriously hurt on it. You know,
The plan is to shoot the next one on the International Space Station. That's the plan for the next.
I can't wait. Take my money yesterday. You know,
I'll always appreciate that. I got to go to China on that for the first time. I got to go to Italy for 2 weeks. I mean, I got to do some great things on that movie because it's a Tom Cruise movie and because Stratton's he's just a great guy. You won't find a better human being than Stratton Leopold. And every time I'm there and I see that line on Broughton Street outside that ice cream store, it makes me happy. It really makes me happy.
Gosh. Is there anything, okay, because we've got to wrap up the show for the radio. We're going to continue in just in a little bit. We'll continue this video on YouTube where Saturday night when you're watching this, so I'm talking to the future, you'll be able to join us on the chat here and chat with Andy Ryan and myself and, your questions and comments on YouTube at Savannah on Film. And right now we're here on WRUU 107.5 FM in Savannah and www.wruu.org on the internet. So everybody's listening. Is there anything we haven't covered yet that, we can get to it in the video, but anything else you wanted to mention while you're here on the radio for this portion of it?
Well, I love Savannah. I have a lot of dear friends still back there. I'm really happy that the industry is returning to Savannah. I'm glad that the incentives that the state of Georgia is offering has spilled out of Atlanta and into places like Savannah, because Savannah has a lot to offer. It's a stunningly beautiful city. We can make the argument all day long, which is prettier, Charleston or Savannah. I'll go with Savannah because of the squares 10 out of 10 times. Yeah. Having a chance on Lady and the Tramp to spend time in Savannah, real time in downtown Savannah, and seeing what it's become, it's incredible. And I'm really glad on Lady and the Tramp that we got to show it off a little bit. And Savannah is a star of that movie. It's just not the dogs. Savannah is really, you can't watch that movie and go, hey, there's Wright Square. Oh, look, there's River Street. Oh, look, there's City Hall.
I love how it begins where it just kind of, the establishing shot and it's snowing in Savannah. And I'm like, oh, that would be wonderful. That would Savannah look so beautiful in the snow.
I've got pictures of me standing there outside the cathedral and all that snow. I mean, and it was great. The house we found on 31st Street was fantastic. I mean, it was just, it all worked. It totally worked. And it was just, it's kind of a love story to Savannah as well. You'll see Jones Street. You'll see Monterey Square, Green Square. Right. Forsyth Park was gorgeous. I was really happy with the way that looked.
So many people I know that worked on the film said of all the productions they've been on, I've heard this more than once, they said Disney knows how to feed people. Definitely. They said it was high class. Everybody was like super friendly on this production. I mean, I've heard nothing but just spectacular things about the whole production.
There's a reason for that. I don't know. My dog's sleeping right here, my 15-year-old dog. Mm-hmm. But when you're around dogs all day, how can you be in a bad mood?
That's true.
I mean, think about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree with you.
You're playing with a dog. How can you be everybody's in a great mood. That's why. And everyone, the director, everyone on that movie were just good people. I mean, our production designer, John Meyer, he's won 2 Oscars.
Right.
He's an incredibly talented man. And you got this kind of talent. I think our costume designer had won 3 or 4 Oscars. You have this kind of talent working on a movie about dogs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was just really beautiful and amazing, and I really, it's a wonderful film, and it was a great thing to kick Disney Plus off with. Well, we've kind of run out of time for the radio portion of this.
We'll do it again
Andy,
sometime, Ed.
and we're going to continue on with the video, so don't anybody go anywhere. But for our radio listeners, thank you for joining us on 107.5 FM in Savannah, and on www.wruu.org if you're listening around the world, here on Savannah on Film. I'm your host, Ed Ciucevich, and
Wear a mask.
anyway, wear a mask. Yes, our opinion is wear a mask. Let's get through this together, and let's get on to getting back to work. In all the industries, not just film. But so if you want to see your theaters open, if you want to see production start again, if you want to get
your local musicians play in your favorite bar, everything. Wear a mask. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. I would say wash someone else's hands, but that's probably not safe. You can ask them if they did. Well, thank you, Andy Ryan, for joining us here on Savannah on Film. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long time coming, having you on the show, and we've got more on the video, so don't go anywhere. But thank you guys for listening, and this has been Savannah on Film. You have been listening to another episode of Savannah on Film, where we give a voice to the Savannah film community. Please like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. This program was originally broadcast on 107.5 FM in Savannah, Georgia, and worldwide on www.wruu.org. Join us next time for more intriguing insights into the vibrant Savannah film community here at Savannah on Film. And we are back here on Savannah on Film, and joining me on this fantastic episode is Andy Ryan, who is world famous for the work on just the blockbusters and a lot of films that some of them I've forgotten, and that through our talking about it and going through it, it's bringing up great memories for me, and I'm sure for you, Andy, of just how you started out. And so we're here on, if you're watching this now, you're watching us on YouTube, and hopefully you watched the rest of the video too, and you're asking your comments and questions. So please do that. This man has a wealth of knowledge. If you're up and coming in the industry, he's going to hopefully share some of his wisdom and advice for you here. And but let's start off with that. Let's say you're thinking you're someone that's starting out in the industry. What would your advice be to those starting out in the film industry?
I could give you the advice we usually give is go find something else to do for a living, but that's not what you're looking for. I mean, this is what you have to understand about this business. It can be really soul sucking. I spent last summer in Bucharest, Romania. Now, I was with two of my very best friends, which was great. But for 3.5 months, I was away from my family. I mean, I was living in a hotel room in Bucharest. And as fantastic as that might sound, trust me, it's not. There's a lot of things like that. If this is the path you're going to choose, it's incredibly rewarding, but it's a hard road. There's a lot of hours. You'll work till 7 in the morning on Saturday morning and go back to work at 7 on Monday morning. There's nights, there's working in the cold. As I watch it rain outside right now, there's working in the rain. I mean, it's hard. It's not easy, but it can be incredibly rewarding, especially when you sit there in a theater and you see your work up on that screen. It's funny. I don't even stick around for the credits anymore. But, you know, I remember at a time when it was really fun seeing my name up there.
Yeah. First time I saw mine, I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And it's interesting. I mean, to me, I look at what I do more from an artistic slant than a technical slant.
Mhm.
And technology is a huge part of it now. All of our lighting fixtures are changing. Talking about things that 10 years ago were science fiction. But I come at it from a little different angle. I come at it from how should this work? How should this look? What do I want this to look like? And to me, I couldn't have picked a career where I get to do something that's artistic and technical at the same time. It's been great and it's rewarding. So I could give you the old adage of work hard, but in this business, that makes a difference because even to this day, when I have a younger guy who is a hard worker, I will find a place for him on that crew. I will always find a place because, as I say, I can teach you lighting. I can teach you the craft. I can't teach you hard work.
Right.
And
Teach
you
that.
hear that. You hear that growing up. You hear it so often. And then you come around to the point where I am now, and you realize I wouldn't be here if I didn't work hard. They would have sent me home on so many of those sets.
Right. James Cameron would have told you to get lost.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. You can't take things personally.
Right.
People get tired. You got to have a really thick skin. It's going to be interesting now moving forward with everything that's going on. There's a real push to limit days to 10-hour days because of the virus. They feel like if you're better rested, you can fight things off better. Plus, it gives more time to disinfect the sets. And that's been a big push in this industry for a number of years, capping the number of hours we work. I've worked 22 hours. On Miss Congeniality, we worked 22 hours on our last day of shooting. In the tank on stage 16 at Warner Brothers. We were in the water. I mean, it's when you think about it, it borderlines, inhumane at times.
It does. I mean, I worked on a set once and it was 22 hours long, and I was almost at the point we were almost at the point where like, okay, we've got to call, final shot on this one because we were just like, losing it. But
that's when people get hurt because people aren't thinking and people are tired. And I remember they were shooting, was it Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12 on the lot at the same time we were there, and I knew the crew on that.
mm-hmm.
And when we wrapped, they all came over. They were prepping, offering to drive us home because they knew what we had just been through. I mean, there's a lot of that, but it's also, I've been to China twice. I've spent over 2 years of my life working in Europe, 2.5 years of my life working in Europe.
Amazing.
Come on. I don't know. Most people talk about visiting Prague for a week. I lived in Prague for 4 months.
I don't mean to pivot back to COVID, and I'm not going to keep us there that long, but I did want to talk about productions. There are some countries, since we're talking about Europe here, that I don't know if you said it was Denmark or wherever, where they're not even wearing masks.
I'll tell you exactly what I said. Yeah. I was on a call this past Saturday with people from all over the world, and I didn't know, should I feel sorry for ourselves or should I be angry? A buddy of mine, Dan Riffle's doing Avatar in Wellington right now in New Zealand, and he was texting me during the call. And if anybody knows how Zoom works, you can have these chats privately.
Right.
And he was telling me that the next day, this past Sunday, there were no more masks in New Zealand. There was no more social distancing. You could go to rugby matches. They had pretty much eradicated the disease, but you go, but that's an island. I go, okay, I'll give you that. But then the guys from Amsterdam started speaking up, the guys from Munich, the guys from Toronto, where they have really found a way to get this disease under control. And production has come back like a house of fire. A lot of work that was scheduled for the U.S. is now going to these other countries.
That was my next question. Are we going to lose a lot of these productions and a lot of jobs? Is the industry going to dry up locally and otherwise throughout the country because we're not doing our part collectively as a society?
I'm not going to call anybody out. You're right. It's a society. We're just not doing our part. And I'm not going to go back to what we talked about in the last hour, but there's some simple things that we can all do to at least give us a fighting chance. We could have been in the same place right now Germany is.
Yes.
or other countries. It's, Ireland. The guys were, there were two gaffers from Ireland on the call, and they were saying that they're having trouble finding crew. It's getting so busy. And every job, every show that leaves the U.S. and goes, that's 200 people who might not have a job, 150 people who might not have a job.
That could end careers for people starting out, that this particular film might have been their big break or led to their next thing.
Well,
And that worries me, that there may be a lot of potential really good filmmakers that are going to get totally cut off at the knees, so to speak.
Let's go to the other extreme. How about all the guys in their 60s that are now retiring? This incredible wealth of knowledge that's saying, it's easier for us just to take our money and run right now. I mean, that's what scares me too. All these guys who could be mentors to these other people, to these younger people. You get your pension, you get your Social Security,
Is the rest of your life worth risking?
Exactly.
To pass on your knowledge? And honestly, it's no, but you bring up a great thing. I mean, I believe strongly in mentorship. I mean, I try to help where I can and people that I work with. And I feel it's almost an obligation when you get to, when you get to that next level, it's always good to reach back, I personally think, and to, people that are really interested and have that drive, to help them out. I feel that's so important. And I don't feel we do enough of that, in the industry. I wish we could do more.
It's one of the things. I'm a proud union member and have been so for a long, long time. But sometimes the unions prevent some of that because it's that catch-22. You have to have a union card, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I like a lot of the lower budgets and things like that, where people can learn, where people can actually get in there. And I think you're right. I think mentoring is an important thing, and not just on the craft, but how to conduct yourself as a person on a set.
Right.
There's a whole, when I came up, we had manners and decorum pretty much beaten into us. There were certain, if the script supervisor was carrying her bag, you went over and carried it for her. There was a politeness. There was a respect for the craft and a respect for those who would come before you. A lot of that's disappearing right now. And one of the things I try to teach the younger guys to come to work for me is that respect, the respect for the industry and for these other people. It's not about you all the time. It's not about...
And we're impatient as a culture. We want everything yesterday. It's like, we don't want to wait for it. We want to, with the pandemic here, from my point of view, I see it as, we were all cooped up for about 2 months, and then some Americans said, okay, I'm done with that. We're on the, the next thing. It's springtime. It's beautiful. How can you stay inside?
It's that, or it's the George Floyd protest. You can go to either.
Right. And we had protesting in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, what kind of year is 2020? I mean, there's not much left that you can even imagine. You couldn't write a script like this, I don't think.
We right now, the rain that you see outside my windows, this is the second tropical depression we've gotten this year already.
I know, and it's just July, so.
I know, and there's a third that's coming our way.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, wow.
And I just did a text on my phone that we're going to probably lose power today and tomorrow. That's okay. We have a generator. When you live in New Orleans, you have a backup generator.
Yeah. Are you in is it, if there's a higher portion of land elevation, you're
there is. I won't get off on this tangent.
Right.
The closer to the river are, the higher up you are, because thousands of years ago, when the Mississippi would flow to the Gulf, all the silt would deposit itself on the banks here.
Okay.
So it is, the closer you get to the river, the higher you are.
Okay.
That's why the French Quarter never flooded during Katrina.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many things I want to talk about.
Let's talk about some movies. Let's talk about Forrest Gump.
Let's talk about Forrest Gump. Yeah, you can't talk about Savannah without talking about Forrest Gump. And I never get tired of, like, I was watching Castaway the other day. I can never get tired of watching a Tom Hanks film. I mean,
it's kind of, the joke is, you pick 3 movies that when you're flipping through, at whatever point they are, you watch the rest. For me, It's True Lies, Almost Famous, and Forrest Gump.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said True Lies. Now, True Lies was with Schwarzenegger and
Tom Arnold.
Tom
Jamie
Arnold.
Lee Curtis. That's a great movie.
Incredibly funny movie. I
Great movie.
love that movie, and I've not seen it in years, but yeah, I
Great
love
movie.
that.
You should watch it. It holds up. It's great.
You know, this
Some
is
of the visual effects are hokey, but boy, the story holds up.
It kind of reminds me, and this is like probably one of the worst panned movies ever, but Hudson Hawk. A lot of people don't like that with Bruce Willis.
We turned that down. We almost did that movie.
I love that movie, especially when, you know, they're swinging on a star, him and Danny Aiello. I love the, you know.
But
awesome.
you forget in True Lies, Billy Paxton had a little role that was so good. He was, you got to watch it. It's great. He's great. And Billy, we could talk about Billy Paxton for hours. He was a friend of mine. So, and
now I always get the actor wrong, but isn't he the president in Independence Day? Is that correct?
No. You're thinking of, I can see it.
That's where I always get a goof up and I can't look it up. But
Billy was in A Simple Plan. I met him through Jim Cameron.
Oh yeah. I see his face now in my head. Okay, I know.
You're friend of Jim Cameron's.
Yeah.
And I did Apollo 13 with him, and I spent all those hours in the Vomit Comet with him and really got to know him. And I was doing a Jeep Cherokee commercial outside of this little town of Twizel, which is on the South Island of New Zealand. We went there looking for snow. They shot a lot of the Lord of the Rings here. Wow. Billy was there doing a movie called Vertical Limit, I think it was, about mountain climbers up on a mountain. Anyway, to make a long story short, Billy's production and our production were in the same hotel. When Billy found out I was in New Zealand.
He was in Twister, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in Twister.
I love Twister. Love Twister.
Billy comes over in the middle of the afternoon, walking up on the set going, "Where the hell is Andy Ryan?" And I look over, and it's Billy. Now, of course, the Jeep people are going crazy because Billy Paxton's on their set. We're selling cars, and he's here. Anyway, he said, we talk, and we make plans to meet. There's one pub in Twizel. And his co-star of the movie was an actress named Robin Tunney, who I'd done a movie called The Craft with. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Why don't we meet tonight in the pub, 8 p.m., and I'll bring Robin along. She'd love to see you." Well, everybody overhears it, so now everybody wants to go to the pub.
Everybody's going to the pub.
For Billy. And I'm a little embarrassed. I'm like, I didn't plan this. So 8 o'clock comes, no Billy Paxton. 8:05 comes, no Billy Paxton. 8:10, people going, "Well, where's Billy?" And I'm like, "Who the hell are you?" Anyway, about 5 minutes later, here comes Billy walking in, and he treated everybody like they were his friends for his whole life. He's just a great guy. Just a great human being. But we digress. Let's go back to Forrest Gump, which is one of those great movies that you can watch from any point. I was in, where was I? Oh, I was in Vienna, Austria, doing a movie called Three Musketeers.
Okay.
And they kept calling me to do Forrest Gump, and I kept turning it down. I just didn't want to do it. At that point in my career, I was making a move. I was moving up, and I was just ready to make that move. And second AD, who's a producer now, named Cheryl Ann Martin, a dear friend, called me and said, "Why don't you want to do this movie? I don't understand. It's a great movie. It's Tom Hanks, et cetera, et cetera." And I said, "I just don't want to," and gave my reasons. And she said, "Don't you understand? We're shooting in Beaufort, South Carolina for 3 months and then going to Savannah. You could be with your mom and dad every weekend," because my mom and dad were living in Savannah on 61st and Abercorn at the time. So I took the movie. And I remember calling my dad and saying, "I'm coming home." And there's silence on the other end of the line. And I'm like,
did he get fired? Was probably the first.
And I go, "Daddy, are you there?" He goes, "Boy, have you forgotten how hot it is here in August?" And I said, "Well, I thought she'd be happy that I'm coming home." He goes, "Of course I'm happy, but have you forgotten how hot it is in August?" And I said, "Don't worry, I can handle it." I think that night it probably went down to 51 in Vienna. I get to Beaufort in August, and he was absolutely right. But it was interesting because I got the first 76 pages of the script. I was shooting in England at the time. We left Vienna and gone to England. And I read it, and it was the most incredible 76 pages I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
But then I said, who the hell would want to see this? I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. So we start prepping in Beaufort, and it's a very famous story. Paramount got cold feet. They wanted to shut the movie down.
Wow.
And Bob Zemeckis, the director, and Steve Starkey, the producer, had a deal at Universal. So they'd say, well, we'll go down for a few weeks. We'll come back up with Universal, blah, 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 blah. And what they did, they worked out a deal where all the principals gave up salary to make the money work and took a percentage, which was the smartest thing they ever did.
It probably was, yeah.
So we make this movie, and from the very beginning, we knew we were making something that people were going to go, this is really special, or this is really stupid. It was going to be one or the other.
That's like a lot of risk in life, you know? I mean, you're either going to fall flat on your face or be wildly successful.
No, you're right. So
Yeah.
anyway, we shoot in Beaufort. We do all the stuff there, the Vietnam stuff, all this stuff in Beaufort. Then we go to Savannah for 2 weeks. Now, my mom and dad had never visited me on a set. And this is why this movie's so special to me.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad thought what I did was a lark, pretty much. He would always say to me, when are you going to give up this Hollywood thing and get a real job? And I go, Dad, it's a real job. Trust me, they pay me. It's a real job. It's what you make money doing this. So we were shooting outside of Jenny's apartment, which is over on Bull and 53rd, Bull and 52nd, somewhere in there. Okay. You know, the building with the wrought iron columns. You go past it all the time.
Yeah.
And my parents lived like on 61st and Bull. So the day we were shooting there, I went and got them and brought them back to the set. And everybody gets up and says hello to them. Tom Hanks comes over and introduces himself to my parents, gives my father his chair to sit in.
Wow.
I mean, it was like, they treated me like I was somebody and I was actually a nobody. And I was always grateful for that movie and for Tom for doing that for me, to really proving to my mom and dad I was legit. And after that, they had the biggest interest in my career. What movie you doing next? Blah, 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 blah. They'd watch the movies. It was a whole different thing. But we shot in Savannah, then we went and shot in Washington, which you can't do anymore because of all the rules in Washington. I shot there on the second XXX and right after 9/11, which was weird.
Yeah, that was State of the Union. Yeah, XXX.
And my wife just shot there last year on Plot Against America. And the things you have to go through now to shoot in DC before the virus. But we had, we shot in front of the Lincoln Memorial. We were just, it was fantastic. So we finished the movie, and I'm doing a movie called Major Pain. Don't look it up. It's not.
I remember Major Pain.
Yeah. So we're in Charlottesville, Virginia shooting, and Forrest Gump opens. And I'm like, I see this. We go to the theater on a Saturday. All the shows on Saturday and Sunday are sold out except for the last show. Who knew?
Right.
Next thing you know, Forrest Gump becomes Forrest Gump. I mean, it becomes this huge, iconic film. People always say, what movie are you proudest of? And it's a hard question to answer because it's like children. Which one of your kids do you like the most? I mean, the movies I'm proudest of probably aren't the most obvious to some. Forrest Gump's up there. Logan's certainly up there.
Yeah,
But
I definitely want to talk about Logan.
I think one of the movies I'm proudest of is a movie called The Rookie.
Oh, yeah.
Dennis Quaid movie about a baseball player.
Yeah, I
It was
remember
directed by John Lee Hancock.
We used to have a baseball season, didn't we? Before 2020.
I think it starts today, actually. This is
Yeah, it
Thursday.
actually does. Like, as we're recording this, they're going to start
Today.
tonight.
I know the Dodgers Giants on tonight. But it's just a great movie about life. It's just a quiet little film, beautifully acted, beautifully photographed. It's just one of those movies that you just have that reaction to, and it's something that I'm very, very proud of. It's usually at the top of my list when people say, "What are you proudest of?" And you know, they're like kids. I'm proud of Lady and the Tramp. I'm certainly proud of Bumblebee. I'm proud of what we did on Transformers. There's a lot of stuff there that you could be.
I think Bumblebee is probably one of my favorite Transformers, probably next to maybe the first. Well, I had problems with different ones. I'm sorry.
Hold on. I'll show you something. Let me grab it right here. Something from Forrest Gump.
Sure.
Hold on.
This is awesome.
I know this is all live.
No, this is great. This is great.
When you walk in my house, you would never have a clue as to what I do for a living. I don't advertise it. I don't need it. But this is one of our wrap gifts from Forrest Gump. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, my gosh, that is so cool. And it's what kind of
Bushmills.
Oh, okay.
Every day at wrap, the director would have a shot of Bushmills. This was Bob Zemeckis' gift to us, never opened.
And probably never should, right?
And the other thing I have is this, which probably doesn't make much sense, with the Forrest Gump on the back. And that's shit happens in Mandarin. So
I thought it would be stupid as a stupid does. That's what my mom used to say.
Yeah, I do that all day long. My wife goes crazy. It's funny because those are the only things in this house you could tell that are what I do for a living. But Bumblebee was an interesting project because the producer of that, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, I did so many movies with. G.I. Joe I did with him, Transformers, Deepwater Horizon. When we came in, there were 2 or 3 of us who had done Transformers. He told us right away, forget everything you learned about Transformers. This is not Transformers. This is going in a whole new direction. Right. And I read the script and was really impressed with the heart that it had.
It did have a lot of heart, yeah.
It took Bumblebee and made him a real person. You know, you could see it. We watched that not long ago. You know, being cooped up for all these months, you watch a lot of stuff. And my daughter and I were looking for something to watch on Hulu one night, and Bumblebee was on. So we watched Bumblebee again.
Another dad movie.
And it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done.
I really liked it. It was a really touching movie, and it was, you know, because I have some friends that are hardcore Transformers from the cartoon, and they called it Bayformers, you know, because it seemed like Michael Bay. I mean, he does fantastic action, and I'm not going to lie and act like I didn't see every one of the Transformers films, because I did. But I really liked Bumblebee. It felt fresh. It felt like a newer take on it. And I know Michael Bay was involved with it, but he had more of a back seat.
Michael produced it. Michael actually came to the set. We were shooting in Golden Gate Park. Well, not Golden Gate Park. What's that park? I forget. Right across the Golden Gate Bridge, there's a huge park there. It's the Muir Forest. It's all of that. And we were shooting there. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And Michael came to the set, which was interesting because Michael was a producer. Right. And it was my problem with the Transformer movies. And I've told Michael this. In the end, it's too much metal crashing into each other. You can't tell who's who anymore.
Well, the first one was, for me, the first one was that way. It was so close up to the screen. It was like, okay, I can't tell which Transformer or Decepticon it is. And the second one, it seemed like he pulled back a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I felt the first one better. I felt the first one, though, had a little bit of humor to it and a little bit of heart. Yeah. You know, the Transformers in Shia's backyard, a lot of that stuff's pretty kind of funny.
Have heart.
And you know, I felt like there was humor to it. There was the awkwardness between a boy and a girl. I mean, there's just a lot going on in that first one that wasn't about metal crashing into each other. But I felt Bumblebee had just so much heart to it. It had, there was a story, there was pacing, there was, you know, it was not the jump cuts that Michael would do. The scenes would play out. It's a teenage girl wanting a car. It's all this stuff that we can all relate to. Remember, when we were 16,
Right.
thought all we wanted was a car. It's those kind of things.
One of the things I didn't like about Bumblebee through all of the films is how he couldn't speak. I mean, it was clever how they used the radio, but after a while, it's like, okay, give him back his voice or something, you know.
Well, I thought the backstory was interesting of how he lost his voice,
Right.
and then the way they gave him the voice, which I thought was really clever.
Yeah, that was in Bumblebee. It was clever, but and when you go through the other Transformers films, that always bothered me. It was always kind of there. I'm like, you know, we need him to speak. And I think there's a famous story that because Bumblebee is what type of car?
He's Camaro.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be a Volkswagen or something like that. Volkswagen passed on it, the idea, and or something like that. I thought I heard.
What was great is at the end of Bumblebee when he transforms into a Camaro, and Haley goes, "You're kidding me! You could have been this all along."
Yeah, it's the little things like that that really make it.
It's the little things like that that I love about movies. It's the little things that you just bring. It makes you smile. You know, this hugely emotional scene where she's saying goodbye, and then the button on it's that little bit of humor at the end. I think that's fantastic. That to me is filmmaking. That's what's great.
And to me, one of my all-time favorite films is Logan. I really want to talk about this one. And what are your thoughts about being involved with that production?
Well, first off, how can you not want to be involved in a Marvel film where two of the Marvel heroes, all-time heroes, die?
Right.
That's, to me, incredible. And that's what, to me, made the last Avengers movie good, is
Robert Downey Jr.
Somebody dies.
Yeah.
You know, I hate, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry if I'm spoiling either one of them for you.
Oh no, I've definitely seen them. I've seen them several times.
And I didn't like Captain America. He wasn't my favorite until that movie. The Endgame made me like him. I mean, the scene where Thor, when he picks up Thor's hammer, and Thor, I knew it.
Like, yeah, that's a classic scene, and that's out of the comics. That's for me though. I think Infinity War is a better film.
Right.
Film goes story-wise, because I remember there were a lot of man tears at the end of that. You know, a lot of fanboy and fangirl tears when, you know, the snap happens and, you know, Star-Lord says we lost, and, you know, everybody starts turning the dust, and we're like, and then the credits roll and you're like, what? And there's no, you know, after credit scene, you're like, I didn't witness that. And then Endgame felt like the comic books, like that final battle felt like they literally just took the comics and put it on screen.
Yeah.
It was so phenomenal. And I think, you know, thinking about the industry, it makes me think about, you know, I think Disney had 7 films that made over $1 billion in 2019, and how lucky and fortunate we should be, and not just for the $1 billion films that Disney had, but for all the great films like Parasite and all these other films that came out in 2019.
Parasite's better the second time.
Yeah. But the thing is, you know, when COVID hit, had it hit last year, oh my gosh, can you imagine if Endgame couldn't come out because, you know, what if we were stuck in that
Jojo Rabbit or
Jojo Rabbit, no Parasite, and
no Marriage Story, no Two Popes. Well,
yeah,
those maybe because they were Netflix movies, but
yeah, I mean, you know, thankfully we had this like record-setting box office year, and I'm all for, you know, I know some people are moving more to streaming and stuff like that, but I've always been a fan of being, especially opening night, if it's a franchise, if it's Star Wars, if it's Lord of the Rings, if it's something like
I love you and thank you for that.
Yeah, because I have to be there, you know, like my wife. The reason I knew me and my wife would work out well together, I'm sorry, I lost my mic there for a minute. I said the reason I knew me and my wife, one of the reasons that we work out well is when Avengers came out, we saw it 4 times in 24 hours. I mean, I'm like a movie fanatic. I have to be there.
My daughter's that way. She's 22. It's yeah, Dad, I can watch it in a week, but it's not opening weekend. And I tell her the same thing. Thank you, and God bless you for that, because of you, I have a job. But one thing I was going to say before we get on the Logan, if you still have your Disney Plus subscription, watch Hamilton.
I did. We did. I've never seen, but been privileged enough to go to New York and see it. But I loved it. I thought it was very good.
Loved it too.
Right. I loved and I forget the gentleman's name that played King. Was it King George III?
Yeah.
And then he was drooling, or just live performance. And that's fine. That's
but let's talk about Logan a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about Logan. Definitely.
I mean, Logan's one of those things when you read that script, you go, "Oh, I want in on this. I definitely want in on this one." And the director is an interesting director. He's since had another movie that I liked a lot, Ford versus Ferrari, that was shot partially in Savannah, over on Hudson Island. But I definitely wanted in, and the cinematographer on Logan was a guy named John Matheson, who probably doesn't ring a bell with anyone. He was nominated for an Oscar for Gladiator. Mm-hmm. So you have that kind of talent, and I go, I definitely want in. And it was one of the best experiences. Hugh Jackman, we were talking a little bit before we started.
Right.
If there's one actor you can work with Hugh, because he's a great guy, just a great human being. And
he's so multi-talented too. I mean,
he's
amazing.
So there's not any ego there. He would tell the funniest stories on himself. Another DP buddy of mine that I've worked with a lot, Dean Simler, actually kind of discovered, well, his wife found Hugh. Hugh was Annie's trainer. Mm-hmm. And Dean, who won an Oscar for Dances with Wolves, did his headshots.
Oh, wow.
So it was just a great experience all around. Patrick Stewart's wonderful.
He's awesome.
And we shot a lot of it in New Orleans. We shot 2 weeks as a little town up in the very northwest corner of the state, or kind of northeast corner, called Sicily Island. It's near Faraday, which is where Jerry Lee Lewis is from. We shot on a farm up there because they wanted corn. That's where all the corn stuff, all the farm stuff was done. We shot there, then we came back and shot in New Orleans for a couple of weeks, and then we went to New Mexico. And we shot around Albuquerque. We shot in a town called Rio Rancho. Mm-hmm. That's where the smelting plant was out there. The interior of the plant was built on stage here in New Orleans. The exterior was done there. And then we went up to this little town called Chama, New Mexico. It's about as far north in New Mexico as you can get without being in Colorado. And that's where the whole end took place. All the forest, all of that was up there. It was one of the most beautiful places you'll ever go. And, we got to go up there for 3 weeks.
Gorgeous. And the film was, people so much want Hugh Jackman to come back, but I don't think, like Robert Downey Jr., I think he needs to let that be the pin in it.
Well, I talked to Hugh about that. I talked to Hugh about that very thing. And what he told me was, he said, believe me, Wolverine has made me wealthier than I ever dreamt possible. Mm-hmm. I have made my money and my name on this. It's time to let it go. It's time to let somebody else fill the shoes. He's very smart. He and Patrick were both adamant they died in this film.
Right.
That's why they agreed to do it. That they both died.
Yeah, and that makes it real stakes. That gives the real stakes. Like you said, like Iron Man dying, or Tony Stark, or Robert Downey Jr. in Endgame. If he didn't die, it just would have felt kind of empty. It gave you that heart punch because he's is like the heart of it, you know. And
But
we lost that.
think about Logan. Hugh, he's a drunk. He's an alcoholic. The whole thing at the beginning where he's passed out in his limo. I mean, he's tired. He doesn't want it anymore. I mean, what I love the whole dark side that was there. And it wasn't always in your face, but it was always right there under the surface.
But it had those meta moments too, where they had the comic book, the X-Men comic book, and they were in the comic book, which is kind of like Deadpool, like breaking the fourth wall in a way. And it was interesting to kind of put that against, the seriousness of
all this is trash, it's rubbish. It's, and she was such a great actor. If she wasn't as good as she was, the movie wouldn't have worked. She held her own.
Yeah, I know they're trying to. There's speculation. Are they going to continue her in like an X-23?
They were talking of that at the time, and I mean, it was just I just felt it was really, really well done. Hugh playing the good guy and the bad guy,
and he was a father figure, a reluctant father figure at best.
Yeah, people died. People of consequence died in that movie. Poor family kind of takes them home for dinner, and
yeah, that's true. Yeah, they get slaughtered, and it's terrible, and you really feel it.
Patrick Stewart's so happy sitting around that dinner table because it's family. It's what he wanted. It really, and then to take that dark turn, it's just. I don't know if there's a perfect movie. We can argue that all day long. You can pick your favorite movie. You can pick any number of things. I don't know if there's ever a perfect movie, but I thought Logan probably on a scale of 100 probably was somewhere around 90, 95. It came pretty damn close.
Yeah. And
because people are going to argue with you because those two characters died. But like you said, at some point they have to. It doesn't.
I think it even more than like I remember when the Dark Knight came out, that changed things a lot, and it transcended the comic book superhero film. It was more a crime drama. I mean, I could watch that film pick it up at any point and just.
I watched The Dark Knight Rises on Sunday. It happened to be.
That's good. That's a very close second, but the Dark Knight is always going to probably be my favorite.
So great about those movies.
But Logan did it in even more realistic way. I mean,
and you got to remember, and I didn't like the Joker. I thought Joaquin Phoenix was great in the Joker, but as a whole, I didn't. The movie just.
Well, that movie. I mean, and I have a podcast where we talked a lot about this. We talk about films all the time. My Geek Homeworld podcast, shameless plug. And we talked about how really the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix is about mental illness, and it's about how society, all these things that are built as like safety nets for a person, every part of that system fails him.
Kind of timely right now, isn't it?
Very much so. And he fell through every crack, and that was such a deserved Oscar, Joaquin. I mean, he can be a little bit out there. I mean, he's one of those actor geniuses, but
growing up in Savannah, in my early years, we lived on 31st Street. I remember buying my comic books at Crumley's drugstore on 31st and Waters. It's long gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember I was always a Batman fan.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always liked about Batman is he came from a very dark place. He didn't do what he did to be a hero. He did it out of vengeance. He came from a dark, dark place. And that's what I thought Christopher Nolan did. And the fact that we're not getting to see Tenet this summer breaks my heart.
It does too, because
it breaks my heart.
That was going to be the movie that would have definitely brought me back to the theater. I mean, I would have been duct taped in a bubble with shrink wrap if I had to, whatever they told me, sit me by myself. I'll sit by the exit if you need me to, but I want to see Tenet.
And that's a conversation that's going to be had. What is it going to take to get people back to the theaters
and feel safe doing it? Yeah, because you know, sometimes you'll go to the drive-through and they wearing a mask. And the other day I went there and the person had the mask down here on their chin, and I'm like, you know, we were like this kind of distance, so we weren't like kind of breathing directly the same air. But I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
that's a question that I think filmmakers are asking themselves. And does this all go now to where you're making smaller movies for the streamers, for Netflix? Because that's who's got all the money right now.
Well, Netflix is talking about, and I think I think it's Chris Evans and it may be Ryan Gosling. I could be wrong on that, but they're talking about $200 million production budget on a film, and I've forgotten the details of it. But I wonder how viable that is, and how do they make this film with a budget that high, you know?
I don't think it's good. You're going to have a hard time spending that kind of money now because, of course, visual effects budgets are going to go up, but visual effects have come down in price. And the problem I have with film and visual effects, 9 times out of 10, visual effects is whoever's going to do it on a movie they're given the job because they're the lowest bidder.
Right.
Sad. I could tell some interesting stories from Wanted along those lines of trying to get it done for cheap and then end up costing a lot more in the end. But I don't know how you spend those budgets in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, post-COVID, you know, or going through COVID and then post-COVID. Yeah, I don't know how the industry is going to be able to maintain it. I feel like we were already getting to that point because what like Blumhouse is doing with their budgets, I mean, they'll make horror films, and like I think one of them was Brightburn, which is basically Superman if he was raised, you know, and it's a bad kid, you know, it's like the opposite of the Superman we know. And they did it on such a small budget, and they didn't have to make as much money to get that return on investment, you know.
Do I have permission to speak freely about Blumhouse?
You have the permission to speak however you.
They're not, with a lot of the crew, they're not very popular because they're notorious for paying the crew nothing.
Really?
They have a formula that works for Blumhouse. And it works well for them. But these movies and these things that they do go on to make so much money. And the crew doesn't share in that.
Really?
The crew's working for very little money to make these things. That's part of the Blumhouse model. Jason Blum is the man who runs the company. So it's within the working technical crews in the industry, they're not that popular. Wow. Because they're not good crew people.
Sad because I like the content they're putting out, you know.
And that's fine. You don't have to know, you don't have to know how the sausage is made. I think that's the expression we always go back to. You don't have to know that. But it's going to be interesting to me. The last movie I did before all of this was called Deepwater with Ana de Armas, who was in Knives Out, and Ben Affleck.
It was a great film.
And Tracy Letts, who was Henry Ford in Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
Small movie. It's all drama. It's the kind of movie we were talking the other day. You could make that movie right now very easily. It's very few locations. It's going to be tough for our industry to go out into the public and shoot on location because most people don't want us there. They don't want us there on the best of days. They're certainly not going to want us there now. But that's the kind of movie that I think you're going to see get made more and more right now. For the next 6 to 8 months, 9 months.
It's also, we're getting to an age where a name doesn't always, there's not many people that can open a film, 100 plus,
I don't think there's anybody really anymore.
I mean, the closest we have is Tom Cruise, Will Smith that I can think of, but some of them have hits and misses, and that's
up until Aladdin, Will couldn't do it,
I mean, and he used to be Mr. 4th of July, you had Independence Day, you had, I still love the Asimov film, I, Robot. That's like one of my favorite films. I have a lot of favorite films. Unfortunately, I love films.
I've done 2 Will Smith movies. I did a movie called Focus, which is not a great movie. I thought it was going to be better.
I honestly don't know that I know that one.
Oh, with God, what's her name? Who was in I, Tonya? I just drew a blank. My daughter would kill me. Oh, I'll think of it. But then I did Bad Boys 3 with him, which was
Right.
basically.
I enjoyed that. Right now that's the number one film box office wise for the year so far because the cutoff.
Wow, I'm number one. I'm number one.
You're in the number one box office. Yeah. Next to that's the Invisible Man, which was an interesting way how that came about from the dark universe that they had the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that really wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And it all fell apart in that universe. And then they reworked the script. And I saw that movie twice. I was like, I have to see this again. And then right after that, the pandemic, everything started closing down. And that may have been the last film I saw this year. So,
I mean, I it's funny because I look back at a movie I did called Now You See Me, which is, I love that movie, and I love it I think it's a very good movie. I think it's very well done. I think the actors are great. It's just really good. But what I love about it, it's something you haven't seen before. It's magicians. It's Jesse Eisenberg, Fisher, and Morgan Freeman, and Mark Ruffalo, Dave Franco, Woody Harrelson. It's a great cast, but it's a great movie. It's a fun movie because you haven't seen it. Then they did another one.
They did the sequel. I didn't see the sequel.
Which is a hard one. I had worked with that director, Jonathan Chu, on the Justin Bieber concert movie.
I was afraid to bring that up. How was it working on the Justin Bieber film?
As everything with me, it has a story. I had been away from home on a movie. So when I was offered the Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus, Best of Both Worlds movie, my daughter loved Hannah Montana. So I took the movie so she could go see Hannah Montana. And she met Miley Cyrus. She actually re-met Miley Cyrus in Savannah when she was doing The Last Dance. They were shooting down the street from us on Tybee, and we went by to say hello, and Miley was really sweet to her. So then I was in Prague doing Wanted when I was offered the Jonas Brothers 3D concert movie. And my daughter was a huge Jonas Brothers fan at this point.
So major points, Dad.
So she got to be in the front row. She's in the movie. She got to meet the band. So I'm in New York doing this movie, Premium Rush, Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie about bicycle messengers in New York. Mm-hmm. And I get offered the Justin Bieber movie. Now, I'm thinking, oh, my daughter's going to love this. So she was living in LA at the time, and I was in New York. And I called her, and I said, sweetheart, Dad's doing this Justin Bieber movie. Would you like me to fly you to New York and take you to this big show at Madison Square Garden? Silence, just like with my dad. We talked about with Forrest Gump, silence. And she goes, I hate him, Dad. Everybody hates him. Well, I sent her $50 for having good taste, but I did that movie, and I'm not embarrassed by any of the movies. Those movies. It's interesting doing 3D movies because you're taking a concert that was lit for a dark arena, mm-hmm. and you have to now translate this to film. And part of the 3D process is it takes a lot of light because of the two cameras and the mirrors and blah, 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 blah. So what you would see when you would go to a concert, I remember going to see Justin Bieber in Gwinnett County Arena in Gwinnett, Georgia, which is Atlanta. And we go backstage for a meeting. It's the first time I'm with these people. And they said, so any questions, any comments? Anybody got anything to say? And I look around, and I'm feeling pretty good. We're staying in the Four Seasons in Atlanta. We're big deals, right? And I go, I'm going to have to relight your show. And the guy who we were talking to was the guy who lit the show, and I didn't know it. And he just goes off on me. You're not relighting it. And I'm like, hey, I'm just telling you, if you shoot that show, you'll never see it in the theater. So we shot a test.
Wow.
And watched it back, he came over to me and apologized.
Wow.
And we relit the show. And that's what I loved about doing these movies. You walk in and you see, like with the Hannah Montana show or the Jonas Brothers, it's incredible lighting show with LED walls and stuff. And now you have to take that and you have to relight that exact same show, but in a way where now the audience is lit and there's enough light that the cameras can capture it. And that was the challenge of those. I'm not embarrassed by any of that stuff. I think the only movie I might be
Was
embarrassed
some of that fixed up in post too? I mean,
we shot those on film, so there's not a lot, there's a little bit you can do in the DI, but not a ton.
Mhm.
So they are what they are. And it's something that I go, how come I don't get the Metallicas or the U2s? I get the Justin Bieber.
You get the Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber.
But you got the cool dad points, and that's really what counts.
That's what I was after at the time. That's all I was after. But go back. The point I want to make about Now You See Me. I think those are the kind of original movies we need to think of right now. Something that people will.
I totally think that. I kind of said this on before. That maybe we're gonna. This is like the perfect chance because, like the drive-ins. I wish I would have invested in the drive-in. Before 2020. But. These small movies, they started tracking again. There was some film that was number one for 3 weeks and it might have made, I don't know, $140,000, I'm guessing, or something. But for that movie, no one would ever heard of that movie, and so it's a chance for films to get seen. And even
the problem is, when you go on Netflix, you're so overwhelmed by what's there.
Oh yeah. Between all the streaming services, it's like, it's too much for me. I've got a list full of shows, and I know movies I'm never going to get to, and I've got to force myself to find time to watch this different service and that one.
We have Netflix, we have Hulu, Amazon, Disney Plus. Plus, we have HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, Stars. I mean, we have it all, and part of that's because of what we do. We're always interested in what other people are doing. Even though I think you and I were sharing a laugh before we started, I spend my free time watching Love It or List It. So,
yeah, that's not a bad show. I always got to know how it ends up,
Well, you got to love it or you got to list it.
Yeah.
We're going to, the camera goes back and forth very badly.
And they usually don't love it. They usually list it,
Correct, my friend. I looked it up.
Oh.
There are 94 loves to 60 listings. I looked it up.
I'm amazed by that.
My research.
Because I wonon't doubt you on that one, but
did my research.
Surprising to me because if you get the feeling that
the Oracle.
That's the Oracle. There you go. What was one film that you did and that was like totally different than what you thought going in it would be, and then
good question.
What came out the other end was totally different.
Ed, you've just asked me a question I have never been asked before, and it's causing me to think a little bit.
Okay. I'll listen to the cranks turning, the wheels turning.
For the good or the war, or
just because I'm devil's advocate here, both.
How are you going to say that? Well, let's. I'm going to discount.
Let you choose.
I'm going to discount the crap that things like A Major Pain and stuff like that. That they are what they are. Boy, I've never been asked that before. I tell you, there's a movie that I did that was vastly underrated and turned out way better than I thought it was. And it was overlooked, and sadly so, was Ed TV. Because the whole reality thing, that's Matthew McConaughey, who has a reality show that becomes the most popular show in America, which at the time was a little far-fetched. We did that right after Armageddon.
Is that kind of Truman Show?
After the Truman Show. We did Armageddon in 97, 98, so we did Ed TV in 98. It was so far ahead of the reality craze. It was really, but it was a really good movie that turned out way better than I thought, that really didn't get the recognition that I had hoped. a lot of movies you go in and it's, G.I. Joe is what it is. It's kind of okay.
Yeah.
I did a remake of Red Dawn with Chris Hemsworth that I thought was going to be.
I liked that almost as much as the original. I thought it worked. And
I thought it was going to be better because Dan Bradley, who directed it, was the second unit director who did all the great stuff in the Bourne movies. And I thought he played it a little too safe. I was really hoping that movie would have been more, but he played it a little too safe for my liking. So that's an example of it going that way. What? You can't be on the computer.
That's the
15-year-old dog just waking up.
Oh.
But it's something, I'm trying to think of one that came out for the better. That's a really good question. Man, that's got me thinking. Because I've done so many.
You've done, for you not to.
Lady and the Tramp was about, Bumblebee. I thought Deepwater Horizon was a really good movie that I
enjoyed Deepwater Horizon.
I really was. I thought that was better than it was for a lot of reasons that I won't get into. I thought that movie was way better than what it was.
I love Mark Wahlberg as an actor, and pretty much anything he does, I like. There's not much that he's done that I don't like. He was in Transformers, even. He was in a lot of stuff. Marky Mark was in a lot of things, but
yeah, but Mark sometimes, I don't want to say phones it in, but it's not. When you hire Mark Wahlberg, you get Mark Wahlberg. You know what I mean?
Well, there's actors like Kevin Costner. I think he's a great actor, but Kevin Costner is Kevin Costner to me in every role he plays.
That's interesting. I
feel that
you might be right. I did a Kevin Costner movie that wasn't a great movie, but it was The Guardian, where he was a Coast Guard swimmer. I thought he was
I remember that.
A little bit old for the part, but I felt like. Yeah, I see what you're saying. He is Kevin.
He kind of is Kevin, but he's still. That doesn't mean he's not a great actor. It's just, I feel like he's Kevin Costner. He was in The Bodyguard. He's Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard. He's.
Well, it's funny. I worked with Kevin again 4 years ago now. Jesus, time flies. On a movie called Molly's Game, which is an Aaron Sorkin film. He wrote and directed with Idris Elba and Jessica Chastain. It's not a great movie.
Yeah.
But hold on. Excuse Every here, go.
The dog. The dog's important.
She was about to make my life miserable.
Yeah, you're about to have Armageddon on your floor there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I'm trying to, I've never been asked that. I'm going to have to really give that some thought because so many times they turn out exactly what you think they're going to be. And sometimes it surprises me when it's like when I did the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought that was going to be really a bad movie, but it actually turned out to be fairly decent. I mean, I hate it when I do a movie like A Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts. It was just really a great movie, again, ahead of its time. And it just doesn't strike that chord with people, which is,
Yeah, box office doesn't tell you. I remember this. I'll put it to you this way. I remember Huey Lewis and Huey Lewis News. He once said his dad told him when he started to make hits and all that, and they were number one all over, the radio and everywhere. And he says, "Remember, son," he said, "the best songs were never number ones." And that's kind of humbling, like sometimes the best films didn't make all that great box office. Parasite didn't make massive box office, but what a phenomenal film that is. Jojo Rabbit didn't, break box office records.
I mean, Parasite is just a great movie.
It moved me deeply, and I think they're bringing out like a black and white version of it or something.
They did with Logan, which was, if you haven't seen the black and white version of Logan, you should.
I have not. I need to watch that.
I think they call it Logan Noir or something, but find it.
It would definitely add to the film. Yeah, I mean, a near perfect film. I agree. Another film like in the sci-fi genre, I think one of the best films of probably the last decade was Blade Runner 2049.
I'm going to grab a water. Talk to the audience. I'll keep talking as long as you want to talk.
I'm talking to the audience while I get to word. I'm going to get a little drink of unsweetened tea. Unfortunately, I have to have unsweetened tea. Can't have the sweet stuff. So if you're watching this now, while he gets Andy Ryan here gets a water, because this is a long broadcast here. We'll be wrapping up pretty soon. I want to thank everybody who's listened on the radio, who's watching this, who's having questions right now, hopefully on YouTube as I'm projecting in the future. Savannah on Film here on YouTube. You're watching the video.
Good old Topo Chico.
There you go. Oh, there you go. You got the good stuff now.
Treatment.
Okay, kids, drink responsibly. It's like I'm having unsweetened tea. It's the best I can do.
All right.
So what were you talking about? I've already forgotten.
Anyway, but I know we're starting to run long here, Ed. I know
I've got to kind of wrap it up. I'm going to run out of space.
Let me say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's do it again sometime.
Definitely. The door is always open. And
anytime you have a question or something, I'd be happy to come on for 10 minutes. And
sounds great. So what I need some wise words of wisdom. But first off, what I'll say to you is that question that I asked earlier, maybe Saturday when you come back on and we're watching the video, you can answer that question. So maybe some time.
I'm going to give you my wise words to end it with.
Yes.
Wear a mask.
We're out. There you go. Okay. I never. My wife says I never know how to end things like this. The show. So
end it with that. Wear a mask.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us, Andy Young on Savannah on Film. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.